All right, now I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to jump into this next section, which is going to be talking about becoming a profitable steward. So remember, we were going to talk about stewardship. We were going to hit some of these pain points head on, and so here we go. All right, we'll pick up from here and we'll go right in. Talked about what to expect. Okay, and when you stay to the end, you'll get the chance to win. So what we're looking for at the end of this presentation, or at the end of the day, we're actually going to pick somebody. We'll say, hey, kind of need to be a livestock producer at scale to work with Roger. So we'll narrow it down and we'll say who needs Roger's help and is producing livestock and can benefit from a one-on-one with him. Great value there. Like, I don't know what he values his time at, but it's quite a bit. So I would say at least $1,000 value there. So encourage you, you got to be live to be able to qualify for that. Okay. Becoming a profitable steward. Stewardship is something that's near and dear to my heart. It is something that I have, that I've studied in depth for years. I tend to look at it from a biblical perspective of what stewardship actually means, specifically coming from the parable of the steward in the Bible, that where much is given, much is not expected, much is actually required, and that as we steward little, we will be given more. So with that context in mind of what stewardship is, here's my promise to you, that if you will engage in this presentation, you'll discover your unique path to create a profitable, regenerative legacy business. Remember those things that we talked about, that not only builds and enriches soil, but also builds financial stability for you and for future generations. So that's a big promise, right? What I promise everyone is they participate full out in any of the events that we do, that they will clearly know the next step that they need to take. And generally, that doesn't come from me. That hurts my ego a little bit, but that's okay. My ego needs to die because it comes from a higher source, and hopefully it comes through me. If it came out of my mouth, it's not from me, it's through me. So I want to ask you a question here. What is that worth? What is it worth to be able to have this at the end of this presentation? Knowing your path to create a profitable, regenerative legacy business that lasts for generations, that builds financial security and stability for you and for future generations. And you could say, well, it's priceless, right? It's worth anything. It's worth everything. Well, I want you to write down a number. Why? Because we can understand in numbers, whatever monetary. For some of you, it might be pounds in the UK. For others, it might be pesos down south. It might be euros, whatever it is. Put a dollar figure in there. I don't know what you use in Africa. Put a dollar amount, write it down, and then we're going to come back to that at the end. I appreciated that Nicole hit head on like our money beliefs. I love that. I'm glad I'm not the only one who does that. So really who this presentation is for people who are willing to change. I run into people, somebody just last week, who we helped them to see the cost of what they were doing in a high input environment, feeding cows 6 months out of the year. Their cost per cow unit was astronomical. It makes no sense to ranch where they ranch economically. Bottom line, they looked at it. They said, we can move. Our family's here. We're going to stay. Okay. But it wasn't that they weren't willing to change, because I think they did change. They made a decision that this is where we want to stay. And hopefully that decision, and I believe it was in alignment with God's will for them also. But if status quo is your default, then probably tune out, because, really we're going to challenge those paradigms, those ways that we view the world. So we must be willing to change. If we don't change, we're going to be extinct. We also must be committed to regeneration. I love our brothers and sisters that farm and ranch conventionally. But as Roger pointed out, If soil continues to degrade at the rate that it will, and what's going to stop it, right? If we don't change our practices, that does not work. So we must change. And we call that change regenerative, meaning that we build increased capacity year over year. Must be willing and want to be profitable. And you must have a focus and a desire to improve upon your stewardship. So if these are you, go ahead and give me a 1 in the chat. Let me know. Like, am I speaking to the right people? Maybe I'm preaching to the choir here, and I get it. There's probably some of you, and I know there's some of you who are still on here like, you got a ways to go, Jared, but doggone it, we're going to go there. So is this for you? Put a 1 in the chat like, I'm in, you're talking, you're speaking my language, and let's roll. Willing to change, committed to regeneration, want to be profitable, and have a focus on stewardship. This is a little bit about our family. Not all of them are in there. We've added 3 since that picture in 2023. So nearly 2 years ago. I've got another daughter-in-law, a grandson, and a granddaughter. So we've got 9 children, ages 7 to 26-ish, and now 4 grandchildren and 1 on the way. And we're super grateful. Family is a big part of what we do. Those are some of the other things that I've done. I love the Ranching for Profit School. Bud Williams was a great mentor of mine. I've studied leadership. Nicole started me down the journey of soil health. I'm affiliated with the Savory Institute as a certified educator, and appreciate Byron and Roger and the AV Hub, the Malmbergs, for supporting the work that we do. I have a book. I'm going to talk about that at the end. Actually got it here on my bookshelf behind me. Our ranch is certified regenerative with Land to Market or the Savory Institute. We're 5 years into it. We're going to do our second long-term data set this next year. And we love to share knowledge through the podcast, which is called the Profitable Steward podcast, through virtual summits and trainings, and being able to speak at other events that align with our purpose at Ag Steward, which our mission at Ag Steward is to help family-owned farmers and ranchers be highly profitable, regenerate the land they steward, and create legacy businesses that can last for generations. That's our purpose. Everything we do, everything we strive to do, albeit imperfectly, is around that mission. This is our ranch. We're located in northeastern Nevada. I wished I should have zoomed out a little bit on that. But if you can see my cursor, Wells, Nevada would be up over here, Elko over here. Salt Lake would be a couple hours to the east, 3 hours to the east, Twin Falls, a couple hours to the north, Twin Falls, Idaho. So people think of Nevada, they think of Las Vegas. Nope, we're not Las Vegas. We don't have any casinos on the ranch. We don't have cactus, well, maybe a few, but it's not high desert. It's not desert, it's high desert. It's 4 seasons. Had single digits last night, snow on the ground. And we operate in 2 locations. This is where we're at right now. This is where we spend the winter. It's a little bit lower elevation. And we've got several thousand acres on this side of the mountain that we own. I'm blessed to be able to inherit from my grandfather and father. And then we also lease an additional 12,000 acres with some contiguous Forest Service allotment, very small, which unlike most of Nevada, Nevada is 97% public, and our ranch is more than 97% private. So we're very blessed to be able to have the autonomy to be adaptive in our management without having to jump through the hoops of the bureaucracy. I'm grateful for that. So this all started, everybody has a start to their journey. Our journey started on July 17th, 1996. I was 21 years old. My wife was 18. We were young. I can say this with all love, back to my former self, we were dumb. We thought we knew a lot, and we didn't realize how much we didn't know until we came up against some pretty hard and challenging times. We knew both of us came from large families. We knew that we wanted to start families, and so we jumped right in immediately. When our youngest was just a baby, my mom and dad asked if we would be willing to take over management of the ranch. And we said, sure, absolutely, we got this. So that they could go serve a series of missions. At first it was 18 months, and then that actually turned into about 12 years of service, where my dad was no longer in the management, holding the reins of the business, nor the leadership. He was completely out of the country, and so our only communication initially was a rare phone call and an email every week. And so here I was, 24-ish, young family, ready to take on the world. Go get it. How hard can this be? Quickly found out that while I could do all the things outside, I had no idea how to be able to operate a business. And I contrast that with my grandfather, who lived to be 96 and never really did retire or step away from the ranch. He died on the ranch. Granted, he did turn over management to my father. And I see that many people my age, so I just turned 50 last year, many people my age still don't have the autonomy to call the shots on their operation that they've worked on for more than half of their lives. There's different reasons for that, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But for me, it was kind of the opposite extreme. It was sink or swim, and by golly, we're still figuring it out. Are we going to sink or swim? So I love my parents. I love their faith and their willingness. And I worked, really only worked one time off the ranch, and that was on the Deseret Ranch in Florida. I worked under a very great manager, Paul Janot. And I saw the contrast between this education and experience. These young people would come out of college, they would immediately step into management, and they would be managing these older cowboys who had been on the ranch. Sometimes they were born on that ranch. And there was a conflict there between the two, the ideas and the practicality of implementing those ideas. And it stood out to me that, man, there's got to be balance. I'm all about education, even though I never made it back to college because my education was here in the School of Hard Knocks on the ranch. But there's balance with experience. And a good mentor once told me, he said, I can't teach you experience. This man, many of us know him in the livestock industry, Tom Dorrance. I'll just read the quote. Wish somebody else could unmute and read it. But a young man was talking to a very successful older man, and he asked him, how is it that you've come to have such good judgment? The older man said, from experience. The young man waited for him to continue, but when the old man didn't, the young man finally asked, well, where does experience come from? The older man said, from bad judgment. If you misjudge, but you benefit from the experience and you learn what not to do next time, you'll develop better judgment. So I actually found that quote. I assume it's directly from him. I've heard it, different iterations of it. But Tom Dorrance was a great horseman, a great stockman. How do we gain experience? It's by making bad decisions, right? And really, there's no way around that. Like, you can study horses, but at some point, you got to get on. And at some point, you're probably going to get bucked off. But hopefully, you learned something from that. Wise men leverage the experience of others to be able to learn. And that's the benefit. And that's one of the key principles within profitable stewardship. So we're going to talk about what profitable stewardship and specifically about what it means to become a profitable steward. Because really, you know, just like this young man, myself, early 20s, I didn't know what I didn't know, but it did hurt us. It financially hurt us. Emotionally, it hurt us, being like, dang, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. It was stressful. It was hard. And so, yeah, ignorance is not bliss, you guys. It's really hard, and we don't need to be in ignorance in the day and age that we live in. Like, we have the opportunity. So I looked for what the formula for success was. I knew there had to be hard work because I was ingrained with that. I knew we needed to pray. I knew you needed to develop skills, and I thought those three things were the components to hard work. And while they're important, they're key ingredients, they might be part of the foundation. They're not everything that you need to be able to build that. And I realized that there were some things that I wanted. I wanted externally to be able to see, to carry on the legacy of a Sorensen, of a cattle and a sheep producer. Our family used to raise sheep, and I grew up as more of a sheep herder than a cowboy, of a land manager, of a steward. Internally, I wanted to know that I was in alignment with God's will that this is what God wanted for me to do, and that I could do what I wanted to do outside and also provide for my family. But it seemed like those things were kind of conflicting, and I quickly hit up against that wall, a proverbial wall, and saw, man, there's got to be a different way. When I realized, okay, there is a different framework, if you will, a different way of looking at it. The stewardship framework is what we call it at Ag Steward, that combines the prayer, the hard work, the skills with what Nicole talked about the mindset of stewardship. And while it may be harder to describe and harder to measure than soil organic matter or yield per acre or weaning weight on calves or conception rate or all those other things that we want to measure and that we feel accolades for, this is just as important. And I would say, again, as Nicole said, it's 100%. It's the mindset combined with these other things that makes us the profitable steward. So let me just pause here for a second and make sure this is landing here, right? I want to be sure that it's coming down to the level that like we can really understand it. You know, a neighbor of mine says, get it down where the calves can eat it. That it's got to be, need to be ground up a little bit. So what are you guys getting from this? Apologize, I can't see the chat when I'm in the presentation style. So any questions to this point? So yeah, at some point you've got to recognize you don't know what you don't know. And there's a different way of being able to look at it and challenging that paradigm. So for me, that came, it was kind of a process. It wasn't necessarily like an event where I realized, okay, hey, I've got to make some changes here to my thinking and to my way of operating to be able to get different results, right? Einstein says, well, we all probably know the Einstein quotes, but the definition of insanity. But the other quote that I really like is that the significant problems in life cannot be solved with the same level of thinking you were at when you created them. And so as I began to internalize that and think, who created the problems? Probably I did. Yeah, I took responsibility. I can own that. But I also can own the solutions. And if we can walk away with nothing else but having empowered you, that you own the solutions, that will have been a success for me. I remember visiting with a potential client. What we do at Ag Steward, we work with people one-on-one and with group and in group settings. We provide classes and opportunities to be able to engage with us to help make your business profitable. And I remember this person was from Canada. I've spent very little time in Canada. And they wanted me to travel up there to consult with them and spend a week and to be able to tell them what to do. And I asked them the question, who's the expert for your ranch? And she will disclose that. She said, well, I don't know. You are. No, wrong answer. Who's the expert for your ranch? Man, I don't know. I don't know. And I waited and I waited and I waited. And finally I had to prompt her and I said, you are. If you expect me to travel up there, spend a day, a week, a month, even a year and give you the silver bullet that's going to change, it's not going to happen. What I can do is I can come and I can question and I can teach a little bit and we can talk about what's working and what's not working, do more of what's working and less of what's not working. We absolutely can do those things. And then you're empowered to be the expert, but you got to take a step back and look at it. Tony, did you have a comment? I can actually see your hand raised. I'd love to hear from you. Let me see if I can unmute you. This is my friend Tony Malmberg from Oregon.
Yeah, it's good stuff, Jared. One of the things I've noticed in my life is that the key to the development and knowledge is curiosity. Can you tell some stories about who were the people in your life, or what was it that made you curious, and who fed that?
Yeah. Well, you're one of them, Tony, and I appreciate that. But it really started, the curiosity started when I went to a stockmanship class with Bud Williams. I'd been to the Ranching for Profit school, and that was probably the catalyst for change, was being able to like realize, okay, I needed some education. I needed to adopt a different mindset. And everybody talked about Bud Williams, so I went to a stockmanship school. And I remember coming home being empowered and excited, like, wow, we can do some great things on these landscapes. And we did. We made some, it was pretty cool. But the curiosity started in that he said, if there's ever a problem, it's you. And not in a judgmental way, like you're the problem. It's like you're the common denominator. Change the way you think, the way you approach the cattle, change the way you get out of bed in the morning. If you go out and you think it's going to be a wreck today, you create what you anticipate. Direct quote from Bud. And so curious was curious about me and being able to look at, what am I doing that's not working when somebody else can do the seemingly same things and get the same results? So yeah, Bud was a very instrumental in being able to create curiosity. And I'll talk about another mentor of mine later on. So appreciate that comment. So jump back in here to the slide. So what is the stewardship framework, and how do we adopt that? It's realizing that what got us here won't get us there. What got the Israelites out of Egypt won't get them to the promised land. Somebody asked, how do we get that generation to change? Sometimes it takes a generation shift before that change really happens. And that's my hope. Not that I hope that the older generation will die off. They have so much to give, but the ideas need to die out. The outdated ideas of wanting to be in the promised land, but living back with the mindset of being in Egypt and being slaves. We can't take that with us. We won't thrive in this new promised land. What got us here will not get us there. We have to look at where do we want to go and realize that it's more about the transformation. It's really more about the journey than it is the destination. The journey is way more important than the destination. And I had a second witness that I should share something here from my wife, and she's really wise. I appreciate Selena being in the back of the room. And if you want to unmute and share anything, I would love it for you to share. And it's this principle that our knowledge only goes so far. Yes, I believe we're the experts. Let me give you a caveat to that. Again, it's not us, it's through us. Every idea, every inspiration, it comes from somewhere. And if we get it from somebody else, they got it from somewhere. And I believe if we trace it back, it all comes from one source. So I was driving my truck from the one ranch. We talked about our summer ranch, which is actually over there to the west. Around the end of the mountain, as a crow flies, it's only less than 10 miles, but it takes an hour to get around the end of the mountain to get from one ranch to the other. And I remember getting to the intersection, jumping on a 2-lane highway. And I had the distinct impression, pray for Gabe. Gabe is this little boy right here. He's now going to be 9 years old. I wanted to dismiss it, but I was already stopped at the stop sign. I took off my hat and I prayed for Gabe. I really didn't think much else of it until I got home that night. And my family told me the story that they were out moving cattle. Gabe's a little cowboy, and his little brother is also, and they love to ride. And he was on a good horse, but that horse likes to run. And when some of the other in the crew decided they were going to race to the gate, so did his horse. And he took off, and Gabe fell off, but his foot got hung up in the stirrup. And looking back at the approximate time of when that was happening, the approximate time of when I was driving It's pretty close to the same time. He came loose and was completely fine. Not even probably scared, maybe cried a bit. He was 5, I think, at the time. But if we don't create time and space in our lives to be able to hear what comes to us through inspiration, how do we expect to be able to steward and manage our families, the ranches, the land, everything that God has given us? So when I say you're the expert of your farm, your ranch, your family, yourself, that's where I'm coming from. We've got to realize that that inspiration will come to you, and you need to stop what you're doing, pause, take action. And I'm so grateful. I have no idea if the outcome would have been different if I'd have just turned up the radio, jumped on my phone, put that thought out of my mind. You are the expert for your business. So this framework that we talked about, and I'm going to skip through some of these things because this is my story. Through 25 years of trying, failing, struggling, figuring it out, attending classes, doing things like this, I realized, okay, the hundreds of thousands of dollars that I spent in tuition to the School of Hard Knocks, I had to learn the hard way. And I've told my parents, man, why didn't you just send me to Harvard? It would have been a whole lot cheaper than what I've cost the business. But I still would have had to learn. So we're gonna breeze through these at a high level because I know our time is somewhat limited. This presentation has been given more in depth at the prior summit, but I'm just gonna hit the high points here. The 3 principles, the 3 secrets, the 3 keys of profitable stewardship are: first, pay yourself first, profit first. There's a story to illustrate each of these, but when it comes to, when we create a budget for our clients and what we strive to apply in our own business, that our number 1 expense, and this is per the Savory Institute, is planning for profit. And secondly, as part of that, is how much you will pay yourself out of that business. Because if you can't afford to pay yourself at least a wage, I'm not saying you have to necessarily pay like a prevailing management wage. You may not be able to support that, but be able to pay yourself a wage out of the business. You just have an expensive hobby. And if you want to do that, that's fine. But just know that it's not a business, it is a hobby. So profit first would be the first principle. Second is invest in your education. And you guys are doing that. You're here. You are participating. You're live, you're present, you're playing full out, you're fast learning, you're doing all the things that we talked about at the beginning of this. And absolutely, that is part of the stewardship journey. Like we have to, we don't have to. We get to choose. If we're going to change, we need to learn a different way. And then third is that your net worth is not equal to your self-worth. Meaning that what we feel about ourselves, the way we view ourselves, is way more than what our balance sheet says, way more than what social media says, way more than what our bank account says, or what anyone says about us. Like our net worth comes from our self-worth comes from a source that doesn't change. Our net worth can change, absolutely, and it does. And it kind of freaks us out when it does sometimes. Those are a brief overview of the principles of stewardship. So let me again just kind of come back, and we're actually going to skip ahead here in the presentation. There are some other key components, but the thing that we'll just build out on the education piece there's lots of ways to learn. Being here and engaging in this presentation, absolutely. Like, I do it because it's part of my life mission, that God gave me the opportunity to be a messenger of truth to others. And I don't take that lightly. Like, it's a great responsibility and it's a great privilege, and an honor to be able to do that. And I also do it because there are things that I've been able to learn that I want other people to learn, so that they don't have to pay such a high tuition to the School of Hard Knocks. And that's the true wisdom, is like being able to leverage the experience and the knowledge that other people have gained. And the way that that looks is by working with somebody, a lot of times one-on-one. I talked about Bud Williams, and Bud Williams, in my mind, was up here. Like, he was untouchable in his skills, in his mindset, not only in stockmanship, but also in marketing. But I got to know somebody who was one of his students, one of his mentees, and that was Wally Olson. And so as I got to know Wally, I could relate more to him. And so I actually sought him out and I said, hey, teach me, help me to learn these marketing principles. Help me to learn what it takes to make a profitable business, and to be able to learn. That was the primary focus, a little bit on stockmanship, but more it was management. And you know what he told me? The very first thing he told me was, go read a book, Jared. And I'm like, but I hired you. You just tell me the answers. He's like, no, go read a book, Jared. Good thing is, it was a simple one. It was a 1 minute manager. You can read it in like 90 minutes, maybe less than that on double speed on Audible. And then we debriefed about it. So mentors on that second piece, that second secret of investing in your education, absolutely critical. Find a mentor. And at Ag Steward, that's what, I see that, man, what if we'd had a program like this that I could have plugged into when I was starting out? And probably it was out there and I just didn't know. But thanks to social media, you guys are able to be here. You've heard about it. This might be the next step. So let me ask you a question here. As I shared my story about the story of becoming a profitable steward, and the journey still continues on. It's certainly been not an easy journey. There, in all candidness and candor, there have been times when I was ready to quit, and there have been times when I thought we would have no choice but to quit. One of those times came an early spring day when I walked to the mailbox, opened up the mailbox on my way to the house for lunch, and saw a letter from the bank. Didn't look like a normal letter. Opened it up, and while it had a lot of other words on the page, the word that stood out to me was foreclosure. And while the mailman wasn't the bearer of he was the bearer of the bad news, it wasn't like I didn't know that we were in tough financial shape. And granted, we have tons of equity, but operating capital was tight. We were upside down on the operating side against what the bank had mortgaged against us. And so, yeah, they had every right to foreclose. It was like, hey, kid, this is not meeting our ratios. Things are not right. You got to change. And they said, you got a year to be able to refinance, and or we'll implement foreclosure. And that's something that I never want anybody else to experience. But at the same time, how would I have learned that lesson if I hadn't have gone through that? How would I have the empathy and the understanding of the pain that other people go through when they look at this legacy that we've been given? Is it a legacy or is it a millstone around my neck? And if I fail, do I see myself as a failure? And it took a long time and some soul searching to be able to say, hey, I don't want to lose the ranch. In fact, I want this. But if I did, my parents aren't going to judge me. My grandparents aren't going to judge me. I can't control what the neighbors think. But can I still accept and love myself and see myself through God's eyes? And as I've been able to do that, that's when I've come to understand that third principle, that really our self-worth does not equal our net worth. So as I jump back into my slides here and just wrap this up, I want to share with you an opportunity to be able to take the next step on your regenerative journey. You know, I asked you the question at the beginning, what would it be worth to be able to have confidence and clarity that you have a profitable regenerative business that's going to last for generations? What is that amount? If you're brave enough, put it in the chat. I mean, is it $1? Is it $1 million? Is it, you know, and I encourage you to put a price on that. What would that be worth? And you know, you're here. I applaud that. For some of you, you're looking for what else? We're presenting many opportunities here with the presenters that we have to be able to take a next step on your regenerative journey. And can I share with you for like 7 minutes that remains a solution that we have at Ag Steward? Go ahead and put a 1 in the chat. Let me know, like, are we on the right page? Are we on the right course here? Are you ready to take the next step on your regenerative journey of becoming a profitable steward? Awesome. So what this looks like, you guys have seen the invitation when you logged in and registered. So the dates are actually February 6th and 7th, not November. That was the last one that we did. But it is a Profitable Steward workshop. And this is a cool workshop, an opportunity to be able to work specifically on your business, not the high level that we're talking about here. We're gonna look specifically at what you're doing, whether it's just starting out or whether you're scaling what you're currently doing. So look at this. I'll actually bring up the page. Let me stop sharing. I'll go back and we'll bring up the actual live page so you can see. And let's have, okay, so this is the Profitable Steward. It's happening in just over 2 weeks. The goal is to be able to transform your ranch and farm into a legacy business, not an expensive hobby, but actually a business. With that, here's the things that we're going to learn. Build out what the stewardship mindset actually is. Create a profitability framework so that when you say, okay, we're gonna implement that principle of paying ourselves first, we actually know how we're going to do it. And we're gonna have a way, like Roger talked about, to be able to track it and compare and look at what our plans are versus what the actuals are, and to be able to track that by enterprise. If enterprise is a new word for you in this class, it basically means your profit centers. Like, we're gonna ask the question, remind me tomorrow, you know, what enterprises are represented here? There might be hay, there might be cow-calf, there might be stock, there's grass finishers, pigs, pasture, poultry, all those, just like Roger, come or was working in the business. I was in the business, you guys. I had no idea. I didn't even know there was a business to work on. I thought all you did was pay the bills and go sign a tax form at the CPA every year. Holy cow. We manage millions of dollars of assets, and yet we treat it like we can't afford to hire a bookkeeper sometimes. And I get it, cash is tight. But how valuable is it to be able to have our numbers in order? I'm not saying you got to go sell your saddle and buy an office chair and sit down for 10 hours a day behind a computer. Absolutely not. What I am challenging you is that you're in the space that I was in to be able to receive inspiration and take action on it. That is the ultimate working on the business. We're going to talk about what it means to build the right team for your context, for you, and how to be the leader in that team. We're going to contrast the cash flow versus net worth. We have a lot of net worth. Sometimes we suffer from cash flow. We are asset rich and dirt poor. Balancing production and profitability. In agriculture, we are extremely productive. profitability lags. And then identifying the weak links in your business. And lastly, growth through stewardship, which is actually kind of encompasses everything that we do. So that is the Profitable Steward work 2-day workshop. Basically what you do, and I encourage you to go there if this is the right next step for you, meaning who is this for? This is for people who are committed to regeneration, to building a legacy business, to becoming profitable stewards, and to doing so profitably. Then this is for you. Do you have to qualify to do this? Not necessarily, but you will be best served if you either have a current farm or ranch that you can work on, or you're building one out. We have had people that are just completely brand new starting out, and they've definitely got good value from this. But it's geared towards somebody. We're going to talk the language a little bit more in depth of like, okay, this is business talk. And with primarily it will be Ag Steward that will be doing the teaching, but we usually have 1 or 2 other people who come on and talk about the key areas of working on your business and enterprise accounting. So super simple. You just put in your name, autofill it, credit card information, and hit complete order, and boom, you are in. And I look forward to working with you one-on-one. Like, you think, can this really, it's 2 days, right? It's 2 days. What can happen in 2 days? Can I just share with you a testimonial of what can happen in 2 days? Because it's pretty phenomenal. Let me pull it up here. This is our friend from Canada, which I know there's a lot of you guys here from Canada today. This is Ed Mason, and he says, let me share screen here with you. Okay, so Ed says, wow, 2 information-packed days designed to help me build a solid foundation for my personal and ranching activities. Jared is one of the best facilitators and slash presenters I have listened to. Thank you, Ed. His holistic and Christian-based approach to being an ag steward and ag stewardship was inspiring and uplifting. If you ever have the opportunity to listen to or interact with Jared, don't pass it up. So appreciate the testimonial, Ed. He's great. He was part of one of the original classes that we did and has been able to take that information and implement it in his family business. So here's, the price. You guys have seen the price. You've seen the way to register. That should be in the chat. So just go there, events.agsteward, and we encourage you to jump on this opportunity. Why take, well, first of all, questions. Why is it only $47? Why is it so cheap relatively? Normally we sell the class, the value of the class is $500. We know that time is valuable as well. And so if we can teach people in a group setting, and if you're willing to devote 2 days to be fully engaged, then we recognize, okay, that is your investment, is your time. And then we'll talk to you about what it looks like to work with Ag Steward one-on-one from there. But first, we got to be sure you gain value, you get clarity on the direction that you're going. And that's our goal, that at the end of the class, just like the end of the class here today and tomorrow, you have clarity on what your next step is. So for those who this is the next step, I encourage you to jump on and take advantage of that opportunity now.